if Taiwan were to face a blockade rather than invasion, what role would autonomous systems play?
Well, autonomous systems are useful because they allow small numbers of people to usefully leverage large numbers of robots and sensors and systems. If you have a 1-to-1 ratio, there's only so many sensors you can use. There's only so many systems that you can use. Autonomy allows one person to control many of these systems. And so whether it's a war scenario or a blockade scenario, that's valuable. Another reason that autonomy is important is because it makes it much harder for your enemy to stop you. In the past, with things like remotely operated systems, so still unmanned, but with a remote control, your enemy just needs to break your radio link. If they can jam your link or destroy your radio transmitters, they can make all your systems stop working. With autonomy, I can have something that flies long ranges to either gather data or strike a target, even if they jam the radio link. This is an example of one of the things that we learned in Ukraine. Earlier in the war, things like Altius were much more dependent on a human actually maintaining a radio link, so they could do things like see a target, select it, push a button, and have it destroy it. We had to make them autonomous to get around that because of these early war failures that we had against Russian and actually Chinese supplied Russian electronic warfare equipment. The only way around it was to build autonomous systems that don't need a radio link. They can go there, find the target. For example, let's say a jammer truck or a missile attack system. Find it and destroy it, even with no radio link at long range. So autonomy is critical because if you don't have autonomy, you are relying on these very weak chains of command and control.
I have been to one of the military bases in Taiwan where they actually showcase how they train for Alta system, and I was very impressed. Like basically,
thank you. I'm glad to hear it.
By how like it was like you mentioned, it was
the military personnel, they've been training a lot with it. So they've gotten very good at moving it around, loading it, launching it, striking with.
The thing right now is that in Taiwan, we still don't have that autonomous system. And what speed we need to work on that?
I think very quickly. If you look at what happened when Ukraine was invaded by Russia at large scale, you can look at the first 6 months of failures of non-autonomous systems as basically the same challenges that Taiwan would likely face. I really strongly believe that in the modern world, with modern jamming equipment, hacking equipment, cyber spoofing, I strongly believe that you cannot rely on systems that do not have some level of autonomy. So I think it's a critical priority, and luckily there's a lot of people in the ministry who agree with me. I think these things will actually make it into the military at scale.
When you look at PRC and Russia in terms of their scaling up also equally in autonomous systems, how much time does be it Taiwan or the US side have? Because I mean, like when we talk about competition, it is not only in terms of trade, but especially also in the military field.
That's right. Well, I mean, in some areas, Taiwan has a massive lead over the United States. For example, the semiconductors that make all of these autonomy projects possible. I wouldn't be able to make my autonomous drones without Taiwan. And I think that Taiwan has a very strong advantage there. In fact, a strong advantage even over PRC. They don't have the same semiconductor capability, and so as a result, they don't have the same autonomy possibilities. If I were Taiwan, I would want to maximally leverage that opportunity.
So you still see potential in Taiwan developing autonomous system and might have an edge over China? I
think that Taiwan as a nation has the strongest edge of any nation on building autonomous systems if it wants to. There's no nation in the world that could do a better job. Not the US, not Japan, not Korea. Taiwan is in a position where it has the things that make advanced autonomy possible. And I'm not saying that these other countries can't make things. I'm making things in those countries. But yeah, Taiwan has a uniquely strong opportunity to outperform China, stay ahead of China, and to have much more powerful autonomous systems in them. And also I will note that I think that Taiwan has a very limited problem that they need to set. And without getting into all the details, there's only a handful of scenarios that Taiwan needs to focus on preventing. If I were China, I would be very concerned about the ability of Taiwan to use autonomy to do large-scale weapons system deployments that make China's ambitions impossible. In other words, if I could abandon all of my principles and abandon all of my national allegiances, and I was thinking just purely as an engineer, would I rather have to solve the Chinese problem or the Taiwan problem? I would much rather be solving the Taiwan problem. I think that you guys I think you have a much better foundation to win.
Mm-hmm. So when you talk about solving a Taiwan problem, meaning it's more like, Taiwan has an edge in terms of technology.
It is an edge in terms of technology, and the edge that you have with your technology is exactly what you need to stop China from threatening Taiwan. It is a perfect fit as long as it's actually put into action and the scale of production is significant enough.
I want to move into your vision in terms of counter-drone warfare, because every drone creates a counter-drone race. So will the future wars be defined more by drones or anti-drone systems?
Everything is a drone, is basically the end state of this. People a few years back would talk about drones as, like a quadcopter, a DJI, and they go bzzz. Yeah. The reality is we have drone boats, and we have drone aircraft, and we have drone ground vehicles and drone tanks. And it is going to be so much cheaper and better and faster and fewer lives at risk to have all of these systems be drones than it is to have them be manned. And so as a result, it's almost inevitable. It is a certainty that people will want to have aircraft that can be used without putting human lives at risk. They will want aerial drones, sea drones, undersea drones that can take risks that would be irresponsible to ask a person to take. And because of that, drones are going to massively outperform the combat ability of manned systems. And so I strongly believe that as a matter of practicality, everything will be autonomous, everything will be a drone.
Okay, I'm going to wrap up a hard questions here. Is there anything that you want to add on to the hard parts we are talking about?
So first, I'm here at Computex. It's the first time I've ever been, but I'm very excited because I love large technology trade shows. The US equivalent is CES, the Consumer Electronics Show. I've been going to CES. Have you ever been?
I haven't, but
gotcha. I've been going since I was 15 years old. I actually used a fake ID to go the first 2 years because you have to be 18 to attend. So I'm very much looking forward to Computex. I guess the last thing I'll say, we talked earlier about how sometimes I'll read Taiwan media coverage or media coverage from anywhere, and I'll be disappointed. And I'll say, they're missing the big picture. Something I've seen in a few Taiwan media outlets is they say, Palmer is a warmonger. He wants war with China because he'll make more money. You can't trust what he says with regard to Taiwan because he wants there to be war. And I kind of want to address that because I think a lot of people don't understand the perspective of someone like me. They say, well, of course Palmer says that that we need to manufacture more weapons. He's in the business of manufacturing more weapons. They don't consider that maybe the reason I'm in the business of manufacturing weapons is because I already believed that we needed more weapons to counter China. I'm in this area because I believe this problem. But more importantly, some people say, Palmer wants war because he'll make more money. One, I already have so much money. I have more money than I have any idea what to do with. It would be crazy for me to want war because I would get even more money. But more importantly, most of my net worth, my money, is not actually in Anduril. It's actually tied up. I made a lot of money from Oculus. I've invested in lots of other companies. Most of my wealth is actually tied up in basically all of these non-weapons companies. And then all my investors, the people who give me money, their money is all tied up in all these other companies. We actually make more money when the world remains stable and trade continues and there's not some kind of World War III. The least profitable thing for me and every other billionaire in the entire United States would be a large-scale war with China. And so I kind of want to give this perspective because I think people often don't quite understand. The so-called elites in the US, they're not promoting weapons technology because they want war. They're promoting weapons technology because they desperately want peace, if only to maintain the value of their investments in all of these. Think about Apple. Apple has a market cap of $3 trillion. What do you think their market cap is going to be if World War III starts and they're not able to use chips from Taiwan and they're not able to make phones in China? Their whole business will fall apart. They'll lose trillions of dollars in market cap. And so I guess the last thing I'll say here is, to Taiwanese people who think that people in the US see Taiwan as some kind of pawn in an attempt to start a war, I assure you, the rich and powerful in the U.S. want nothing more than continued stability in Taiwan. It is really the reason they're investing in companies like Anduril, is to try and maintain that stability to the greatest extent they can. So, an interesting topic that I thought I would throw out there.
Yeah. So trying to say it's not only maintaining values, but also maintaining basically peace in the world to ensure prosperity.
Peace is very profitable. The most profitable thing in the modern world is peace and maintaining our modern globalized economy. And if someone said Palmer wants war because he's just an insane psycho, that would be maybe a more reasonable critique. It's not true, but the idea that I would want war because it's profitable misses the truth of how the world economy works.
So it misses the entire point.
It misses the entire point. So that would be my recommendation to the conspiracy theorists globally and in Taiwan. If you're going to say that I'm actually secretly trying to make war happen, you should abandon the theory that it's because it will make me money, and say that it's just because I'm a crazy person.
I'll just end this interview. Do you have anything that you want to speak to your fan base in Taiwan? Apparently you have one here.
I appreciate all of the support. I have a lot of Taiwan fans and followers on social media, and I really appreciate their support. I think that one of the things that I've noticed about people in Taiwan, and there's a recognition by people of these problems that comes by living under a sense of threat that you don't get in other countries. And you see this in I think people in Ukraine, they have this common feeling. They understand that these are not hypotheticals. You do need tools to defend yourself. I think people in Israel often feel the same way. I think people in certain Middle Eastern nations feel the same way. And then you contrast that, for example, with a lot of people in the US. And because we don't really feel threatened, it's a lot easier to say, oh, well, we don't need the military, we don't need tools to defend ourselves. So the thing I really appreciate about my fans in Taiwan is they're people who understand what we're doing, they understand why we're doing it, and they understand the importance of the work. So thank you fans. I'm a fan of you as well.
想看最完整的新闻内容，记得下载 TVBS 新闻网 APP。